Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Steve Shadrach, author of The God Ask, and also a man that has started many successful ministries and continues to work hard towards the Great Commission. And Steve, I count it a pleasure to have you on the podcast once again, my friend. Of course, you were the one, along with John Patton, who started Support Raising Solutions and the Center for Mission Mobilization many years ago. And so in some ways, it's like I get to interview the guy who taught me everything I know. So thank you so much, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Aaron. You're a gracious man, but you're a man that is a man of application, that takes everything that God teaches you, other teaches you, and you immediately apply it to your life in such practical ways. So I admire you for that reason and many others.
Well, thank you. Well, listen, of course, we don't pre-rehearse our conversations. You and I did talk about what we might talk about. And honestly, Steve, you brought this up to me a few different times, and I've always said, well, no, that's not really our audience, Steve. That's not really our people. And yet, seems like it was time to take a break from the norm. So to the listeners, I would say, this is a different episode. Like, we're not necessarily talking to just everybody here. We really want to talk to leaders that are in some way, shape, or form, you have authority within your organization. You have the ability to set the culture, change the culture when it comes to support raising. And what are you supposed to do? What's your role in all of that as you give some oversight to others who need to raise support and live off support so that they can be a part of your ministry vision? So, Steve, did I set that up correctly? That's what we had agreed to talk about, right?
Yes. I think that the ones listening today have a different role in their organization. Some have, everyone has a position, a title within the organization. Some are higher up on that organizational chart than others.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that a person can't have tremendous influence. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So we might want to touch on just the how to have influence within the organization, regardless of your title.
Right.
But what about the leaders, the men and women who really are kind of the decision makers? They're the executives. They're the regional leaders or the country leaders, or ones that really do oversee numbers of staff, that if they really caught the MPD vision and they really had strong, deep feelings and convictions about it, they could really change the culture, even the DNA of that organization in some powerful ways.
For sure they really could. But I'm going to throw a curveball right at your head here right away. And I love those baseball analogies, but here it comes, high and tight. You might want to duck. What's the threat? Like, what's the risk? If that person who has the title in the organization tries to, let this take care of itself, and maybe do its own thing and go, well, yeah, it's important, but it's less important these other things. What's the risk there?
Yeah, I think that I've observed it a lot over the years. I've been helping organizations for, my own organizations for 35 years and helping other organizations for 20. And I would say denial is, out of sight, out of mind. If I can just put my blinders on and act, or put my hands over my eyes and act like this doesn't exist, or just delegate it to someone else.
Yeah.
That's very common. Oh, that's so-and-so's responsibility. Or some literally don't do anything. They just hope that somehow this whole thing works out.
Yeah.
And 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, after they start this ministry, they realize we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble. And either we go back to square one and really rethink and repray this whole personal support raising thing, or the quality and quantity of our staff and our ministry is going to be profoundly affected. we're not going to make the kind of impact that we wanted to because we have not laid the kind of groundwork. And then that leader has to look within and reflect deeply and say, have I truly taken full responsibility? Have I modeled this? Have I grabbed on these convictions, or have I just kind of put it to the side, assumed it would take place, hope it would take place, and lo and behold, it hasn't taken place.
So to the president, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, what have you, whatever your organizational title is, let us just extend you an olive branch of grace and love.
That's right.
We're not here to tell you how horrible you are at your job.
Good point.
That is not at all. And yet, boy, I do hope the next few minutes that Steve and I talk about this, maybe we'll lead you to a next step. Something that perhaps you might need to do, pray about, a decision you might need to make, action you might need to take to really help move your staff and your team towards being spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and oh yes, it is possible, fully funded. So with that being said, Steve, start us off, brother. I know you gathered a few thoughts together. What are some of the things that come to mind as we've been kind of even just thinking about having this conversation?
Well, you know, Aaron, and have done a number of these surveys. I think we used to call them audits, but how we have a whole series of questions that we will give anonymously via secure email, online, that really can help evaluate the health, the support raising health of an organization in 12 key categories.
Quick pause, just so that the listeners know, SRS does offer something called the SRS survey. It is for organizations that are part of the SRS network, and it allows you the ability to do kind of a private in-house via MailChimp survey of 70 plus questions that just helps you figure out what's currently going on, what's the health of the support raising in your organization. Not just dollars, but hearts and minds and attitudes and things like that. So that's what Steve is referring to. I want to keep going. I'm sorry I interrupted, but I want people to understand what you were talking about.
Well, I wasn't even planning on bringing up the survey and audit, but it hit me as we were talking that would be a good place to start for the leadership of an organization to say, before we can know where the next steps we ought to go, let's do a good, honest evaluation of where we're at.
Yes.
And the reason I brought that up is because I remember in the early days when I was involved in doing those surveys, I remember one organization, you would know the organization if I said it, they had a lot of staff, a lot of great staff, quality staff. And so they had a very attractive front door of people coming into this organization, coming on staff. But 92% of the people that were leaving their staff were leaving either mainly or partly due to, guess what? Support raising issues.
Yeah.
So they had a beautiful front door, but someone forgot to close the back door.
Yes.
And so I know that we're talking to leaders right now from so many different Christian ministries and organizations who you love to recruit staff, and it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful day to welcome them onto your staff, and you want them to flourish and stay for years and years and multiply themselves and have a longevity. But then it's a painful day. It's a painful week, a month to lose staff.
Yes.
And so why do we lose staff? And I think that we as leaders need to recognize deep down a big reason. Probably over the years of the 1,500 organizations I've got to work with over the years, if I really were honest, if people were really honest, that some aspect of support raising, either them or their spouse or their finances or their whatever, it somehow is tied to the whole area of support. It's such a key central area that a lot of the staff that you've lost in your organization, they may say, the Lord has led me here.
That sounds spiritual.
And the Lord has led me there.
So spiritual.
Yes. No. Deep down, they're either tired or afraid or feeling like a failure, or they're not able to support themselves or their family. Those are really kind of the key things. So if I really love my staff, if I really care for my staff as a leader in my organization, I will put the area of support raising health on the top shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, you and I started hanging out together, about 2012, 2013 really is when we started spending time together. I had originally gone through a boot camp, I think back in 2006, and but when you and I started spending some time together, it was because I had accidentally found myself doing some support raising coaching. I was really worried I was giving bad advice, but I do recall. You were driving. We were in your car. We were on college in Fayetteville. We were driving somewhere together, and for the first time, you connected the dots for me when you said, "Aaron, I have to believe for all the ministry leaders that I've come in contact with, the number one felt need."
Felt need, yeah. Good.
People might not want to talk about it. They might not even admit it, but their number one felt need is the finances.
Yes.
But they don't want to be honest about it because that seems less than spiritual.
Oh, yeah.
And so that I remember that because I was already all about the ministry of equipping ministry leaders to survive and thrive. I mean, that was and still remains my passion in ministry. But I went, wow, if that's people's number one felt need, then somebody should be doing something about that. Which, of course, you were, but also that led to you recruiting me because you realized that you needed a lot of help, and I still need a lot of help. But that's off on a tangent there. But the second thing there is if you really love your leaders, you said that.
Yep.
And I don't want to cast again. This is a safe zone. We're not attacking ministry leaders.
No.
And yet, there's a heart thing within that. Do you actually care enough?
Yes.
For your leaders to look out for their most felt need? Steve, that unfortunately, I can't always say that's true.
Well, there are real needs in all of our lives and in our organizations, and there are felt needs. And let's face it, human beings, we tend to prioritize, and pain tends to surface these things to the top. Felt needs are the ones that are the most immediate. And if I care for the marriages of the staff in our organization, I can be looking at a guy right in the eye and he can go, "Oh, no problem at all." Oh no, we're doing fine, Shad, no problem at all. And he can just kind of cut things off right at the neck and not admit anything. But when he goes home, he looks into the eyes of his wife and she looks back at him, he realizes we got some struggles here. We got some issues here. Mm-hmm. My spouse does not feel like I am fully funding and providing for our family, and she's looking to me, for that responsibility, and I'm making excuses. I can picture a staff retreat we had, and we've gone through ups and downs as an organization. So
every organization does.
I give ourselves, about a B.
Okay.
And we moved up, it's like my GPA in college and high school. I'm not even sure I had one, but we're growing, we're moving. But I remember this one particular staff retreat, probably 6 or 7, 8 years ago. It was in Colorado, and it was a final time of sharing. After the retreat is over, all the staff is there. There's an article on SRS called, I think, 17 Years in Support Raising Bondage or something titled like that. And so this guy had been on support for 17 years. Well, in our final sharing time, he stands up unannounced, unprovoked by anyone, and he just said, for the first time in my life, I've decided that I'm no longer going to be in bondage to being underfunded. I am going to take full responsibility before God for my family, for my ministry, for my support, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to raise my full support. And his wife was just looking at him like he was an alien. Like, where did this person come from?
Right.
She was stunned, And then he sat down. Well, lo and behold, another man across the room, another staff guy stood up, and he goes, "I'm going to take responsibility too. For the first time in my life, I'm going to, get to full support. I'm not going to stop till I'm going to support my family, and I'm going to be fully funded." Well, his wife was just stunned looking at her, And a third man stood up, and a fourth man stood up. Now, at some point, guys were probably feeling like, maybe there were wives that were elbowing. "Okay, Sonny, when are you going to stand up?" But it was so refreshing, and that guy has become the most well-funded staff person in our whole organization to this day.
And he's a great, I know who you're talking about. He's a great model.
Well, he raises more money for his family, his ministry. He's overseas, his kids' education. I mean, money is pouring in. So,
but he's not about the money.
No.
That is not what drives him at all. Not even a little bit.
No.
He sees that the key to fulfilling the ministry vision that God has given him and his family and their role within the Center for Mission Mobilization is inviting others to partner so that they can actually accomplish the task that Jesus put in front of them.
But he answered the question that Scott Morton asked years ago, how much should we raise? He was able finally to answer that question. Mm-hmm. And the answer to Scott's profound question is raise enough funds to maximize the fruitfulness of your family and maximize the fruitfulness of your ministry. Yep. And I'm telling you, this woman respects this staff guy. I can tell. Mm. She respects him like crazy. Not that she didn't before, but her respect and affection and appreciation, all the kids. Mm-hmm. I have spent a week in their home in a foreign country, and I've observed how the whole family respects this man because he has taken full responsibility for his sport racing. Right. So that's what a leader does in an organization, I think, as well. Takes full responsibility for his organization as well.
So I'm going to, I guess, share a counter, more sobering story because that's a great win. Praise the Lord. But also, we've seen the other side of that, haven't we? And in fact, I had a friend, and I'm not going to say his name, or I'm not trying to shame him or anybody, but the reality is, his wife actually at one point verbalized, "I don't respect you. You don't lead our family. Ugh. We don't have the finances to do just the basic things. Our car's broken. Our house is broken. You call yourself a minister, but you're always busy doing other things, and you never stop to raise up a team, and just my trust with you is gone."
Man alive.
And unfortunately, their marriage did dissolve.
Ah.
Now, I know that there was other things in play. Certainly, it wasn't just the financial issue.
That was a big one.
That was a big one. And so, to our organizational leaders, we have to realize that those within our organization, if we want to really love them, if we want them to thrive in their family and their ministry, not or, both.
Yes, both.
Then we might have a responsibility to engage, if not lead, in some difficult conversations.
Yep.
And inspire and educate and set some standards that might not currently be the norm, but really need to be.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down some ideas, Aaron, about if I were to be interacting with a leader of an organization, the leader, yes, but also there are other leaders in that inner circle of an organization that need to be living and breathing and eating and modeling this MPD health and creating that culture. Some of them are just kind of practical ideas that I've got.
Well, let's do this. So first of all, to the listener, you might not be that leader in your organization. So before you hear what Steve is about to say, we're going to go ahead and pre-ask you. Maybe share this podcast with your leader later on. And so I'm letting you off the hook. If you in your mind and spirit right now feel like you're supposed to share with what Steve is going to say before he even says it, that way it doesn't feel like it's like something that you're trying to tell your leader directly, but instead, due to the nature of the topic, you're already planning to share this regardless of what Steve says. So maybe that helps some of our listeners that might want to share it.
And I think you can be the Tim Tebow of your organization, even though you're not the designated leader. You can become a middle. If you're in the middle of that organization, how do you influence up? How you see needs within the organization at the top, the leaders, and so these are some ideas that you can bring to them. I struggle when someone comes to me with a problem in the organization, but not with a solution. The leaders in your organization, friends, they know what the problems are. They're waiting. They don't need for you to come tell them one more time what the gap or the need or the problem is. They will welcome you, though, if you, in a very respectful way, a very sensitive way, acknowledge an issue or a problem or need, but then have a suggested solution. Every leader hopefully will appreciate that.
Yes.
So I think some of these things our listeners can jot down and then potentially go to their leader, or this particular podcast may be something you'd want to pass on to them. So.
Okay, well, let's get going.
Well, one thing I would say, Aaron, is we have produced a book called Blind Spots that we've talked about in previous podcasts that Scott Morton, he is the guru of all gurus, and he has had major leadership responsibilities within the organization at the vice president level in different areas. He has written this book, and it is for leaders. And so if you are leading staff at whatever level who are required to raise their support, I would take this book and I would use it as a personal and professional development tool with leaders in your organization and go through it and talk through it, use the discussion questions. Do it honestly, openly.
Might be the best $20 you spend this year on your organization.
Yeah, I don't even think it's 20. It's just a paperback and it's simple. But it's biblically based. It's so practical. It's so creative in the way Scott writes. So the book Blind Spots, you can get that through CMM Press or Amazon. That'd be a place to start, I think, for if a leader wanted to start creating. At least starting to cultivate this culture that we're talking about.
Right. And I'll just say that again for people that might be wanting to write that down. cmmpress.org. And then the book is called Blind Spots by Scott Morton. Highly, highly recommend it. All right, Steve, what else you got in mind?
Well, we talked about the survey. That would be another offering that SRS has that Aaron or one of the office personnel could certainly guide you toward.
It's usually me that goes through it with people.
Okay.
Someone in the office sets it up, but I usually sit down and talk with the leader afterwards. So if you're tired of my voice already, maybe don't do that.
That's right. I think I would take a look at the hard data. I'd get my finance person, my receipt person, my whoever it is that really does all the specifics.
Right.
And I'd take a hard look at the numbers.
Okay.
And I would really, I wouldn't do it I'd do it by myself initially, but then I'd pull my key leaders in and say, what does this tell you about our staff? Where are we at, gang?
Yes.
And let's take an honest look at our staff. Are they fully funded? Are these salaries sufficient? Are they really being fruitful to maximize the fruitfulness of their ministry, their family, et cetera? So looking at those numbers,
right,
I think is a great place to start as well.
But with those numbers, those are your own internal numbers and what you know because of your own accounting. Also, those numbers might be if you do an SRS survey and you actually can see what people have, but also what they think they have. Also, sometimes that might even measure what's their opinion about what you say they should be raising.
Yes.
It might not be as good as you think, and so there might be some other things to communicate. So yeah, looking at that data, you're definitely right, Steve. That's really important.
Yeah, and don't just look at this month. Take a 36-month look. The last 36 months, and let's really graph this thing out. Macro, all the staff, but then region by region, even person by person, and you're going to see some rough spots probably.
Oh yeah,
and that every organization has those.
All of them.
Now, I think that I would also identify a champion or two. I would say, gosh, Susie over here has been so fully funded now for X number of years.
Yes.
Robert and his family have been fully funded for 24 straight months, and they've got this big surplus. And so, in other words, I would identify who your potential poster children are, your champions.
Yeah.
I'd pull them in, and I'd have a Zoom call at least, if not in person. And I'd say, how did you do it? Tell me how you did this. What was the secret? Why have you been successful when others have not? And why do you feel so strongly about this? What do you observe about our organization? Where can we improve that all of our staff could be where you're at?
And you might learn some information that, quite honestly, right now, and there's no judgment here, you're not smart enough to even ask about.
That's right.
You just, they know things you don't know.
Right.
Also, Steve, can I make a suggestion with that as well?
Please.
Those people might potentially, given their skill set, they might be great coaches.
Beautiful.
moving forward.
Beautiful.
Now, listen, we know that not every organization has support raising coaches.
Right.
We encourage that, but Steve, you and I were having a conversation before we even turned on the podcast that it seems like there's learning that people will do with reading your wonderful book that God asked, with reading, of course, the Bible, with watching the videos pre-boot camp.
Right.
There's training. That's what happens during the boot camp.
Right.
But then kind of the third really important things that not enough people are doing yet is coaching.
Yep.
And so we certainly encourage you, if you have in-house coaches, hopefully they're a part of the SRS network, to be having people. It's not an interruption from their ministry.
No.
It's a part of the ministry within the organization. Have coaches, or maybe you get a third-party coach, and that's fine for a time as well. I actually go out of my way oftentimes, Steve, to not mention Exago and exago.org, but of course I am associated with Exago. We offer some MPD coaching, but just recently somebody asked me, like, hey, should we use Exago's MPD coaching or should we do our own in-house? And I said, hey, listen, if you can do your own in-house, do that, because you're building a culture. You might have to use some third-party coaching for a while.
Yeah.
I get that. We'd love to help you. But at the end of the day, if you want to build a culture of people who they join your team, they're fresh, they're doe-eyed, and you want to move them to quickly getting fully funded, the reality is there's probably going to need to be a coach involved with that that's walking with them week to week and kind of getting into the muck, right?
Oh, definitely. And so, these identified individuals, I think I would create a little back pocket advisory team, or steering committee, or whatever you want to title it. But they are the ones who feel strongly about this and have modeled some things. And if you appreciate them and affirm them and learn from them and listen to them, not only are you going to learn something, but you're going to really help them understand how important this truly is in the organization.
Yeah.
They're going to want to start partnering with you on this. You have affirmed them. You've included them. And lo and behold, there could be certain individuals that you now are going to say, would you take a portion of your time to start coaching others, like you said?
Yep.
Or at some point you may say, Brother Ronnie here, would you be willing to be our in-house trainer? If SRS will train you, will you be the in-house trainer here, or will you be the in-house coach?
We had Meg Craig on a podcast, I don't know, it's 10, maybe 15 podcasts ago. That's where she came from. Her organization didn't have a support-raising trainer, much less a coach. She just started noticing, hey, this is a big issue. She was fully funded. She started asking questions.
Wow.
And at some point, leadership in the organization started saying, hey, if you don't just know the answers, you know the questions. Would you help us? And to this day, Meg still has some influence and role within the organization with support raising, even though most of her time she still spends on campus. Her passion is still the campus.
Yes.
But now she's able to help identify, and they have a support raising coach. It's not even her. But they went through a several year process to get there.
Do you know, over the years, what I've observed, Aaron, is that the organizations that have taken a strong, healthy turn towards a greater support raising culture and success in this area with their staff, it's usually the trickle up theory. Someone in the organization got training, went to a boot camp, got fully funded, and all of a sudden gets the attention of the leaders.
Right.
And they go, whoa, what happened here? Who is this person? And now this person does have some influence, but it takes months, sometimes years, to trickle up where the leadership really starts to think deeply about these things. The purpose of this podcast and what I'm kind of focused on in my efforts these days is I'm going after the executives and the leaders of hundreds upon hundreds of Christian ministries across the U.S., across the world, and saying, let's not wait for the trickle up to take place.
Amen.
Let's be men and women who are going to take full responsibility for this. And if God has entrusted you with a leadership role in your organization, this has to be top shelf for you.
And I think that right there is a perfect cliffhanger, because this is the end of the part 1 of this podcast. Come back next week. We're going to keep it going. And Steve is going to bring some more information. We're going to continue this conversation. Thank you so much, Steve, for being on the SRS podcast today. I appreciate it, and I already look forward to us continuing part 2 of this next week. Thank you again.
Great to be with you, bro.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisinSolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.